A white cop stops a black man in a wealthy neighborhood, convinced he doesn't belong. What starts as a routine stop turns into humiliation and cuffs. But the man he mocks isn't just anyone. In court, they meet again. And what happens next will shock you. Let's start at the beginning. Officer Mark Sullivan, 34, was the kind of policeman who prided himself on getting the job done. His tall, broad-shouldered frame and sharp blue uniform often added to his intimidating presence on the streets of Brookfield, a bustling Midwestern city. To the public, Mark appeared to be a dedicated officer, his steely expression reflecting his no-nonsense approach to law enforcement. However, within the precinct, whispers circulated about his track record, particularly his confrontations with minority residents. Some colleagues thought his methods bordered on excessive, though no formal complaints ever seemed to stick. On a crisp, sunny morning, Mark's patrol brought him to the affluent Westbrook Heights neighborhood, where manicured lawns and gated driveways signified wealth and exclusivity. As he cruised down the street, his attention snagged on a sleek black Mercedes gliding past. Behind the wheel was Jamal Carter, a 38-year-old black man whose tailored navy suit and polished demeanor immediately caught Mark's suspicion. Without hesitation, Mark flicked on his lights and pulled Jamal over. As Jamal lowered his window, his tone was calm, yet firm. "Good morning, officer. May I ask why I've been stopped?" His leather briefcase sat in the passenger seat, hinting at a man on his way to important business. Mark's response was clipped. "You were driving suspiciously. Step out of the car." Jamal furrowed his brow but complied, maintaining his composure. "Suspiciously? Could you explain what you mean by that?" Mark ignored the question, his focus shifting to the car. "Just step out," he barked. Once Jamal was outside, Mark conducted an aggressive search, rifling through the car and carelessly tossing Jamal's belongings onto the pavement. Jamal's calm started to fray. "Officer, this is unnecessary. I know my rights," he protested. That was enough for Mark. "Obstruction of justice," he declared, snapping cuffs onto Jamal's wrists. As neighbors gathered, some filming on their phones, Mark dismissed the murmurs of concern. To him, this was just another day enforcing the law, his methods beyond reproach, or so he thought. After hours in a holding cell, Jamal Carter finally steps out of the precinct, his wrists still bearing faint marks from the cuffs. The insults Officer Mark Sullivan had hurled at him, derogatory comments laced with superiority and disdain, linger in his mind. His tailored suit is rumpled, his dignity bruised, but his resolve remains intact. Driving home in silence, Jamal replays the incident, knowing this isn't just about him, but about a system that perpetuates such treatment. When he arrives home, his wife, Lisa, greets him with a mixture of relief and anger. Lisa, a fellow attorney, and Jamal's steadfast partner, listens intently as he recounts every detail. Her expression hardens as he describes being pulled over without cause, his belongings strewn across the pavement, and the baseless accusation of obstruction. "You need to file a complaint," Lisa insists, her tone firm but supportive. "Mark Sullivan needs to answer for this." Jamal nods but holds up a hand. "We will, but on my terms," he replies. As a seasoned civil rights lawyer, Jamal knows the power of a calculated, evidence-driven response. Filing a lawsuit, he reasons, will not only hold the officer accountable, but also expose systemic issues within the department. Lisa agrees, and they begin to strategize. Meanwhile, at the Brookfield Police Department, Mark Sullivan faces an uncomfortable revelation. Footage of the traffic stop has gone viral, sparking outrage. Clips of Mark tossing Jamal's belongings and cuffing him without clear cause dominate social media, drawing heated commentary. Mark's superiors demand answers, launching an internal inquiry. Yet, Mark remains unrepentant, claiming Jamal was hostile and dismissing the public's reaction as overblown. Confident in the department's history of shielding officers, Mark continues with business as usual. Unbeknownst to Mark, Jamal's legal team works tirelessly. They compile damning evidence, including bystander videos, witness testimonies, and Mark's own prior complaints. The lawsuit is filed, and the community takes notice. As the court date approaches, tensions simmer in Brookfield, where lines are drawn between those demanding accountability and those defending the status quo. The stage is set for a confrontation that will ripple far beyond the courtroom. The courtroom buzzes with anticipation as the trial begins, the gallery filled with reporters, community members, and supporters of both sides. Mark Sullivan sits at the defense table, his uniform swapped for a sharp gray suit. Though his expression is outwardly calm, his eyes flick nervously around the room. He reassures himself that the law is on his side, that his actions were justified, and that the noise around this case will fade once the facts are laid out. His lawyer, a seasoned defender of law enforcement, leans over to whisper final reassurances, further bolstering Mark's confidence. But as the doors open and the plaintiff's legal team enters, Mark's confidence wavers. Jamal Carter strides in, exuding composure and authority in a crisp black suit. Mark's jaw tightens as Jamal introduces himself to the court, not as the victim of police misconduct, but as the lead attorney representing himself. The murmurs ripple through the gallery, and even the judge's gavel can barely silence the room. Jamal's opening statement is a masterclass in restraint and precision, his voice steady and deliberate. He outlines the pattern of bias within the Brookfield Police Department, weaving in Mark's disciplinary history and the broader implications of unchecked power in law enforcement. "This case isn't just about what happened to me," Jamal says, his gaze piercing. "It's about what has happened, and continues to happen, to countless others who have no platform to speak." As the trial progresses, the disparity between the two men becomes glaring. Jamal remains composed, presenting video evidence of the traffic stop and witness testimonies that paint a damning picture of Mark's actions. The footage, played repeatedly, shows Mark's dismissive attitude, the unwarranted search, and the unnecessary use of handcuffs. Mark's lawyer tries to spin the narrative, but the weight of the evidence proves insurmountable. On the stand, Mark falters under Jamal's cross-examination. Jamal methodically unpacks Mark's words and actions, revealing implicit bias and inconsistency. By the end, Mark's credibility is in tatters, his defensiveness a stark contrast to Jamal's professionalism. As closing arguments are made, the gallery can sense the tide has turned. This is no longer a question of guilt, but a reckoning with the systemic issues Jamal sought to expose. The courtroom falls silent as the jury foreperson rises to deliver the verdict. "In favor of the plaintiff," she announces, her voice steady. Gasps and murmurs ripple through the gallery as the judge continues. Jamal Carter is awarded damages, and the Brookfield Police Department is ordered to implement immediate reforms addressing racial profiling and misconduct. At the defense table, Mark Sullivan's face hardens. His lawyer whispers something to him, but Mark barely registers it. Suspended pending review, his once steadfast confidence is now a brittle shell. Yet, even as the weight of the verdict settles, Mark doesn't reflect on his actions. Instead, he attributes the outcome to mob mentality and public backlash stoked by viral footage. Introspection remains elusive as he clings to his belief that he was just doing his job. For Jamal, the victory is bittersweet. Standing at a podium during a press conference later that day, he addresses the gathered crowd and media. This lawsuit was never about revenge, he says, his voice resolute. It was about accountability. It's about ensuring no one else has to endure what I did. Change isn't just necessary, it's overdue. His words resonate deeply, igniting a fire within the community. Activists, students, and leaders rally behind him, initiating grassroots efforts to push for broader police reform and equity initiatives. Months later, Mark finds himself seated uncomfortably in a conference room, surrounded by other officers for a mandatory bias training session. The atmosphere is tense as footage from his infamous traffic stop plays on the screen. Mark's stomach churns as he watches his own face sneer at Jamal and hears the condescending tone in his voice. For the first time, he feels the shame he refused to acknowledge. Testimonies from others who have suffered similar treatment are equally jarring. A young black man speaks about living in fear of routine stops, while a Latina woman describes her humiliation during a baseless search. Mark shifts uneasily in his seat, unable to dismiss their words as he once might have. Though Mark's journey toward change remains uncertain, the ripple effects of his public fall serve as a stark warning. His story becomes a symbol of the accountability Jamal fought for, a reminder that justice, though slow, is inexorable.